On this episode of Money Matters with Jim Doyle, it's one challenge to raise a child, but another to make them your CEO. Guests Brian Rudy, Claire Sutton, and Victor Yoshida talk tough about the family business. Plan more, worry less. This is Money Matters with Jim Doyle.
In today's show, we're talking about family businesses, the backbone of the Canadian economy. From succession to sibling relationships to family dynamics, planning is crucial because everyone's future is tied to the business. All too often, the retirement and estate planning needs are intertwined, so finding that delicate balance can be a challenge. That's why I invited our trusted advisors to share their expertise. But first, I sent Paige to ask about issues facing family businesses.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing family businesses these days?
I would say the biggest challenge, I could only say from a personal aspect, is getting our product out there, getting our product seen, and people buying our product.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge facing family-owned businesses these days would be funding. It's really hard for a smaller corporation to get funding from the big banks. So thankfully there is organizations like the BDC and the EDC that are willing to fund.
I think the biggest challenge facing family businesses is competing against the big box corporations and the monopolies. When you're fully involved in something like that, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of being competitive, price-wise, labor-wise, staff-wise.
Were you surprised by what they didn't talk about here?
A little bit. They were all talking about external factors. As a lawyer, I would expect to think about human resource issues, business succession issues, and how the business fits within the family and the community.
Now, you mentioned family, and that brings up more issues.
More issues. What you could hear in the tape is that the pressures from the business, transfer over to the pressures in the family. The conversations, the tensions, it's all there.
Okay, so Brian, in your world, can you treat one without affecting the other?
Well, I think when you have a regular business, you deal with regular business issues. HR, you look at the quality of the person working, you make hires and fires on that basis. When you have a family business, it's not so simple. You have to look at the quality of your family members. What are their skills, and can they do the job? But what if they can't? If they can't do the job, how do you fire them?
Yeah. How does that informality affect decision making?
It's difficult because it's enabling, right? Parents often enable the children, and what you want to do is have them educate the children, bring them into the business early so that they can have a voice and learn and work their way up within the company.
Now, is it possible to have too much of a voice?
Sometimes a parent really puts their kid out there before they're ready, and they give them a senior management position, call them president, and the rest of the management team shakes their heads.
Well, listen, these are some wonderful points here. We'll be right back. Now, are families good about talking about this type of stuff, or do they tend to keep secrets?
Well, they tend to keep secrets, or else they're not quite as open as they may be with a third party.
In this segment, we're talking about overlooked risks that could be unintentionally harming your family business. What do you think of when we talk about that sort of stuff?
Well, from my point of view, I think business succession risk is something that most family business owners don't ever think about. Normally when you sell your business or you're thinking about succession, it's going to be to your kids. But if it's not to your kids, is it going to be to your management team, or is it going to be to an outside buyer? But the planning involved in a succession plan takes a long time, and it has to start early. And by not dealing with it, you're taking a risk that you're going to lose value in your business.
Okay. Now, Claire, there's the technical stuff that Brian's talking about, but there's also the human side of this equation. How does this present itself?
Well, that's right. Any succession planning is a transition, right? When you're looking at long-term planning, continuity planning, you're throwing people in a major life transition. And a transition is different to the change in that there's a psychological aspect to it.
Okay. Now, Brian, do you find a lot of business owners are reluctant to go down this path?
I think people don't think about it. They're too busy working their business. They're getting up, they're dealing with receivables, they're dealing with their inventory. They're not thinking about where are we going, and are my kids able to do what I've done my entire career? Are they able to take it over?
Now, of course, parents always trust their kids innately, right? And they know all the right things to do.
Well, they want to trust their kids innately, right? And sometimes what they do, instead of educating them about the family business, they enable them.
I met up with Victor Yoshida to talk about some of the elements of the family business that might not be getting the strategic attention they deserve. So, Victor, where do you think family businesses are the least prepared these days?
Well, we find most of our clients are so involved in the day-to-day operations of their businesses that they fail to start planning ahead on how to incorporate key employees or family members into their businesses. That lack of planning that hurts them in the future, and really we like to get involved to help them get a plan together with the use of their professional consultants, their lawyers, financial advisors, accountants. We want to build a plan for them to help them out.
And what type of problems does that create?
Well, you take a look at the corporate structure, the legal structure of the company. You look at from the tax aspect, there are various advantages and pitfalls when you look at how to incorporate key employees or even family members. So the planning is very crucial, and for some tax plans, it should be done years in advance.
Years,
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not happy when they come and tell you, I think I'm going to retire tomorrow.
That's right. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're ahead of the game. So what we do with our clients is we try to get that open communication going with them, with their family members, or try to incorporate their family members into the conversation.
Now, are families good about talking about this type of stuff, or do they tend to keep secrets?
Well, they tend to keep secrets, or else they're not quite as open as they may be with a third party. For some reason, and it may be family dynamics, we find that sometimes it's hard to get that open communication between family members.
Because you are mingling a family business and you're mingling a family.
Correct. So now you get personalities, you get certain skills. The whole family dynamic sometimes comes into play on that side.
If you have one wish with your business clients, what would you like them to do?
Plan ahead and communicate. And that's the key that we find to a successful transition or just the successful operation of a family business.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Victor's comments about being time-starved and maybe not able to plan ahead?
Victor's absolutely right. There's a need for continuity planning and open and clear communication.
So Brian, how does that show itself in your world?
Business owners are always very involved in running their business, and they're not thinking, am I going to transition to my management team, to my children, which children? Am I planning for a sale of my business in the future? And if that's not something that people address early on, then they leave it too late and they lose tremendous value in their business succession. Everybody needs to take time to step back once in a while.
I love that idea of looking at the business as a whole. Let's go back to Paige as she asks why family business matters.
So when we talk about the family business is your business, what comes to mind?
It comes to mind as a family. We're doing business together as a family, so unity, agreement, getting our product out there in agreement.
Yeah, so it is my business. I own it in part with my mom and sister. So our family business, what comes to mind for me is it's a real unit, and there's a lot on the line, especially for me as one of the investors. So it's personal.
I think everyone has a stake in it, right? So I think small companies are a huge employer in BC. They hire lots of local people. They contribute to the local economy. So even when someone says, I'm not involved in something like that, actually you are, because you are being impacted through multiple different channels.
I heard family businesses doing business together as a family, but decisions made in the business may unintentionally affect the retirement plans of key family members. What is your experiences here?
I think one of the main things that I'll see in a family business is failure to recognize when your children or a child cannot take over the business and make the appropriate planning. And that's something that owners need to be very mindful of.
Too early, too late? Claire, what do you see?
Yeah, I think there's a need for education, and there's a need for everyone in the family to have a voice. Strong families build strong businesses.
Listen, a lot of great points here. I like where we're going with this. We'll be right back.
Well, because we know each other so intimately, we don't want to overstep people's boundaries, but yet we want our opinion heard.
In this segment, we're talking about essential conversations that family businesses are reluctant to explore. First, those that affect the business, but more importantly, those that affect the family. Claire, what do you think?
Well, this highlights the fact that open and clear communication is an essential skill in families, and it's not happening.
It's not happening. Brian, in your world?
I like that communication concept. Very often in a family business, you'll have people doing different roles, and if you have one child that's running the business on behalf of the parents, and other children that are not, I think it's important to involve the family as a whole in the business so they understand what's going on and why things are going on.
Now, Claire, does that open a can of worms? Kids in the business, kids out of the business?
Absolutely. But everyone should have a voice and be heard. And that should start early on. And unfortunately, it doesn't. So sometimes children are labeled, there's a golden child, there's a black sheep, and then that's how the troubles can begin and continue. So open and clear communication.
Okay, I heard troubles. I guess that's your camp?
Well, we see trouble sometimes. You know, if you don't recognize that Junior is the black sheep and address it early, then you can have trouble.
Family issues, never a lot of fun. But let's go back to Paige for some thoughts on families talking openly about their business.
Why do you think it's difficult for family businesses to talk openly about the business?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing for families to talk about the business openly because you're a family as well as you know, you're a business. So you have a lot of tensions within running a business, and you know, you want to navigate them, but you also want to do it in a, you know, respectful way. So yeah, that can be a difficult thing as well.
Well, because we know each other so intimately, we don't want to overstep people's boundaries, but yet we want our opinion heard.
Oh, I actually think that family-owned businesses do talk about their business. I'm related to a family business, and they talk about it really openly at family functions and during our get-togethers. So I'd actually say that people that are involved in that type of business are actually quite open and quite willing to talk about what they do because they feel passionately about it.
Listen, the business families that I talk to, they talk about it all the time. Now, two comments struck a chord here. One is that we know each other, and the other is boundaries. Do families wrestle with this?
Absolutely, all the time. Boundaries that seep into the business, and the business seeps into the family issues.
And how does that look in your world, Brian?
Well, sometimes people don't want to overstep boundaries, but some families always overstep boundaries. And we, as lawyers, have seen some very nasty disputes in business where families are torn apart because of failure to communicate, failure to understand why the patriarch or matriarch has made certain decisions.
Let's go back to Victor for some thoughts on the biggest challenges facing family businesses. So Victor, when working with family businesses, what are the biggest challenges you see them facing?
Well, as an accountant, the biggest challenge we have with our clients is working with the tax system. Tax rules are constantly changing. Plans that we may have had in place no longer work in the day-to-day operations of various family businesses, and also planning for the future.
So what type of changes are real current for us to hear?
Well, the income splitting rules that they brought in are a game changer. And when it comes to looking into the future and looking at transition, and if you're going to be selling to a third party or selling to a key employee or family members, there are different tax rules for each scenario. And so we have to take all that into account. Again, things are constantly changing. Things that are rules today may change a year from now. So we want to make sure that we have the corporate structure in place that can be as flexible as possible, that we have a tax plan in place, and also get the family members talking.
So if you had one bit of advice for business owners today, what would that be?
I think communicate with your family members if they're going to be involved. Communicate with key employees if you think there's going to be a future for them within the business. The other thing is get your financial advisor involved, get your team together, your accountant, your lawyer, to get this plan into place for you, and try and keep it as flexible as possible so that you can't plan for every scenario, but plan for as many scenarios as you can.
Wonderful stuff, Victor, as usual.
Thank you.
These tax changes are significant and highlight the importance of planning. How well do you feel family businesses manage change?
I think there's two types of families. Families that plan, that set their meetings with their professional advisors, and then families that don't plan. And then they meet with us later to deal with the problems, to pick up the pieces.
Problems?
Oh, so many problems in families. So many tensions. There's an underbelly of issues that never get addressed and that have built up over the years. So open, clear communication is key.
Now that communication is so essential for doing things that they need to do. Where are they falling down?
Sometimes it's difficult to talk about these hard issues. It's difficult to sit down with your child and tell them how things are going to play out with their siblings or not play out. And it's difficult to tell a child that they might not be the right person for a job.
Claire, I can hear you want a thought over
I
here.
want to jump in there because what's also important is that they hear from all the children, right? And what role that each individual child may see. It's not just about the founder, say, choosing the next person for the position. It's listening to all the children.
Listening, that's a powerful word. Family businesses face a lot of challenges. Good planning shouldn't be one of them. We'll be right back.
I know it sounds so easy and simple, but we find a lot of our clients have a great amount of difficulty to keep that communication going back and forth.
It's now time to final thoughts on family business is your business. Ryan?
Well, we've heard a lot of issues, but I think if you think about family business, there's unity, commitment, and trust. And I think that allows a family business to really succeed, where sometimes other businesses can't.
Now you mentioned earlier HR and family challenges.
You deal with the HR issues. You need to make sure your children are ready to take over the business, that they interact well with your management team. But if you manage that, it can be done. I've seen some very successful transitions.
Ryan, I like your thoughts there. Let's go back to Victor for his final thoughts. I'd love if you could share some final thoughts on this.
It sounds simple, but I think what it comes down to is making sure that there's communication, open lines of communication with various stakeholders within your business, whether they're key employees or even family members. And I know it sounds so easy and so simple, but we find a lot of our clients have a great amount of difficulty trying to keep that communication going back and forth, just trying to make sure everybody is realistic in their expectations. And so that's one of the key things. The other thing is planning. It's not just planning a year or a few months in advance, it's years in advance. And it's very important that you get your financial advisor, your accountant, your lawyer involved in all these different aspects, because you want to make sure that everyone is looked after, not just the parents or the children, but everybody involved within the business.
A lot of stakeholders involved here.
There are a lot of stakeholders. You can't please everybody, but you want to make sure that everybody is treated on an equal plane.
Perfect. So all they need is a little nudge from you and everything works out smoothly?
Well, we hope so. Sometimes it's more than a nudge, but like I said, it's getting the process moving, and that's the key thing.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
Subject. Where's Claire?
Oh, well, just picking up from what Brian and Victor said, it's so important to have a long-term view, even a 100-year view of where the family business can do in the preservation of wealth. And start early, educate the children, start with family meetings at home, engage the children, bring them down to the business so that they understand what it's all about, because family business is their business.
Wonderful. You know, I wish we had more time here. I want to thank Victor, Brian, and Claire for sharing their thoughts on money matters. Because financial aspects touch so many elements of our lives, it pays to get great advice. Plan more, worry less.